Jeetu.
Hi.
Very nice having you on the show. Jeetu, why don't you tell us a little about BDO and what role are you playing there?
So, BDO is a global financial advisory firm. We are almost $14 billion enterprise, and we are globally fifth largest firm in the world. We have presence around 170 countries and 150,000 odd chartered accountant and lawyers. In India, we started our shop almost 8 to 10 years back. Now we are almost 9,000 plus employees with 350 partner director group, and we are across all the services lines: audit, tax, and advisory. I represent deal advisory services, where I work very closely with the startup ecosystem along with the private equity and VCs, and help them in growing from a smaller company to a larger company, right from $1 million to $1 billion. I worked with a recent transactional companies like Atomberg, which has become very big in the consumer space, and IC Ice Cream, which we all have. So these are a couple of the transactions which I had to mention, but very focusedly I'm working on consumers, technology, and healthcare. These are the sectors we are working.
Right. And when you say that you take care of the transactions, would you like to walk us through one example, a life cycle of a transaction, and what would that look like?
Yeah. So BDO as a specialist for each of the service line, and within each service line, we have the separate partners. But in order to talk about the entire life cycle of a transaction, where we help the companies, the startups in the fundraising, or maybe for the private equity and VC funds to help getting the companies where they want to invest. So right from fundraising, then their valuation, then their diligence, and how the deal need to be structured so that it is favorable both to the founders as well as the fund.
Right.
And if any of the fund or the promoter want an IPO exit, that also advisory which we provide.
Understood. And what is the size of the startups that you engage with?
So typically we work with a fundraise of at least a $5 to $10 million sort of a check size we start working with. But having said that, if the startup has got a lot of potential, we can go a bit low as well. So we are working with the clients like SIG, Six Sense Ventures, we are working with Jungle Ventures, we are working with Infoed Ventures. So there are many clients where we are working with. Another mature private equity space also we are working with the funds. So both the size, we are working with a smaller and a mid-size. But typically our sweet spot is $10 million to $50 million.
10 to 50.
50, yeah.
Right. And what is the age of these startups that you mostly engage with?
So it depends. I think age does not matter. Zapto is a classic example where in the first year of their founding, they raised $100 million. So I think it's more to do with the product which they offer. Right now I'm working with a company which is into manufacturing of clothing, t-shirts and all those. And in the first year of the operation, they have done 200 crores. And now they are on a very big fund spree. So I think age do not matter. What I understand, what is the product they are offering, what is the product and the technology do they offer. I think that excites the
Right. You mentioned InfoEdge also, I think. So from what I understand, InfoEdge does its own screening and finding the right startups and then hopefully investing in those.
So they have a separate venture arm, and where they are working with a lot of advisors like us in helping them putting the money. So they do have their own team as well. Every investment fund has their own team, but they always need the advisors to do the external validation.
Right. In India, how many startups have you sort of transacted with?
So I personally have worked with more than 350 startups. So in my total sort of a span of my transaction career, I have worked on more than 600 transactions. Out of which 350 has been on a startup ecosystem. I work very closely with the Startup India as well, where for initial years, I've worked on their state startup rankings and other stuff as well. So my team actually. So
right. And which industries do most of these 350 would fall in?
Largely it is consumers, technology and healthcare, as I said. So largely in India, technology is one of the core of the ecosystem, as you know. And that is the Microsoft and AWS very much interested, because the way technology has sort of created the efficiency and has done the problem solving in India, I think it cannot be done anywhere.
Right. And since we are at the startup event today, and I'm sure there are a lot of entrepreneurs also listening, if they were to get in touch with you, how does that work? And secondly, who pays for the entire journey of service?
So it depends, if they have to, so I'll share my email ID maybe, where we have a common ID for those startups, and they can sort of drop an email there where my team will screen it, and then we can talk to them. Having said, in terms of the payments, it depends upon what sort of service they are offering, and according to that, if a fund is hiring us, then we are being paid by the funds. But if a startup want to get take our help and advice, we can find out the structure where it can be paid by them.
So mostly it's the venture firms that hire you to get the job done.
It's both the ways. It's both the ways. As I told you, yeah. So like if I'll say a matured fund also hires us for bringing the startups or the larger mature companies to their table. At the same time, they hire us for doing their due diligence, valuation, structuring, and closure. Startups or I'll say the larger startups also hire us for getting their fundraise. So it depends.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of the money that is getting raised in that range of 5 to 50 million, let's say, where do you see that money going? Is it mostly going into marketing to acquire more customers, or?
So that again, I mean, that there was a time in 21-22 where everyone was just raising money, paying salaries, do the customer acquisition. But I think the things have changed. World is not there. Money is not easy. So the startups which are not good, they are dying. They have died, in fact. So what I would like to say to all the entrepreneurs that please be frugal with your money the way it is your money, because then only we find the right set of investor. If still that mindset is there, people are not funding. I'm telling you by all my experience, the matrices have changed the way we are evaluating the startups. So I think we need to be very, very focused about where the money is getting spent. I think money should be spent and the ROI of that money has to be there. That's what the investor. There's no point. What point I'm trying to say is not about not to spend anything on marketing, but to spend on a marketing correct manner so that ROI can be achieved. Because at the end of the day, there has to be some return on that investment.
Yeah.
So I think earlier what was happening, everyone was spending recklessly. Either hiring, if a person will get 10 rupees, you'll hire them at 20. So there was a lot of rush, lot of speed which was needed. But I think now it's a matter of making the people profitable.
Right.
So I think that's where it is.
And is funding winter real, or are there still?
It is definitely real. It is definitely real, but it is real only for the firms, as I told you, who were not really focusing on the product. They were just focusing on splurging and getting the customers only from discount offerings. If the product is good, there are still good assets in the market. There's no funding winter.
Right. What would be, let's say, the top 3 things on which you would evaluate a startup?
First, what is the psychology of a founder? How he intend to treat this money and what vision he has for his business. So that is the first and the foremost important part, because at the end of the day, he has to run the show. And if you see all the mishaps which has happened in the ecosystem because of the startup ecosystem tainted, either Zelengo, Go Mechanic, Bharat Pay, all this because of the intent of the founders. So that is the first and the foremost important point. Second, I think the most important is what is the product, whether the product really exists or it's just being run through the money which is being pumped in. Because then it should not be a game of last man standing, that you just keep on putting the money and become the last man standing, right? So I think the product market fit has to be there, and the consumer psychology and reaction to that product should be real. There should be acceptance which has to be there, because you do anything. We have seen HULs and ITCs of the world launching the brand, launching the product, failing despite having the best of the marketing budgets. So I mean, it's been going around since decades. So I think the product market fit and acceptance and the reaction to the consumer psychology has to be there. I think the third part, how properly you are able to treat the money which you have, the capital allocation, how you are doing that capital allocation. So if you have $10 million in your bank account, you should try to, sort of scale your business till 10 million. If you try to scale it up by 20 million, then you will be a capital shortage and the internal controls also, that everything need to be processed and controlled, even the firm has raised a $10 million check.
Right.
Because otherwise employee frauds are very common, leakages are very common. So, I mean, the control of the business is very less of the founder. So it will not make sense.
So, and for the rounds that you help with, usually these money, the money is supposed to last for how long, roughly, on an average?
Again, very, very tricky question, very subjective. But I think it depends upon the business. Ideally, money should be only used for growth, not for funding the losses. So it completely depends what is the growth. But and some of the business losses are need to be funded. That's very understood. But it should not be forever. It cannot be for perpetuity. It has to be for some.
High for 1 to 2 years of.
Yeah. Should be. But that's a very, again, I said it's very subjective. Let's say if it is a tech business, which where the product needs to be created, then obviously it can be 3 years also. If the investors are ready, because the moment the product is ready, if it is able to sort of, get on more business. So I think that's what it is.
Sure. And the turnaround time from the time you start evaluating a business to
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. 90 days is a typical turnaround time, but normally I have not seen anything closing in 90 days in current situation. Everything is spilling over to 5 to 6.
Right. You mentioned one example of some company which raised 100 million in the first year.
Zepto is very famous.
Yeah. Would you like to share that as a case study in terms of how much were they doing exactly as revenue?
They were not doing anything at that point of time.
Zero revenue.
Yeah. It was a pre-revenue company, and that is the best The guys were from Stanford,
Oh.
and their model, they wanted to create a category. Quick commerce was never a category, so we call it quick commerce. So quick commerce was never a category. They created a $4 billion sort of market, which is real. That point of time when they started 2021, 3 years back, it was just $200-300 million market. So they made it real.
So when Zepto was raising funds, Blinkit had already started.
No, it started after that.
Oh.
Because of them, they realized that it is not going to work, and they changed. They pivoted their model. It was Grofers, used to be Grofers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So what actually worked for Zepto, and what did the investors actually see that it did the way it did?
I think, again, as I told you, there was a category, there were consumers, new age categories, and consumers were there who want this convenience over the money. So that's where they're.
Right. Interesting. Any last thoughts you might want to share with the entrepreneurs?
I think the startup ecosystem is quite fascinating. I think India is a 140 crore country, cannot be a job seeker country. We have to be a job giver country. And I've been following this ecosystem. The only point which I have been always backing this ecosystem, that this is the only community which can really back the country. And I think it should sort of keep on doing that, because very, very critical part. But in terms of raising the money, growing, please be very frugal. Please treat it as your own money and create a good product out of India. India is anyways much ahead than any other part of the world in terms of the startup ecosystem, I'm telling you.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jeetu.